Well, good morning and welcome. Thank you for getting out on this foggy day and joining us here to talk about heat pumps. My name's Gene Hanlon. I'm chair of the Green Sanctuary Committee for the Unitarian Church of Lincoln, as well as help coordinate the Coalition for Environmental Improvement, two of the sponsors here for the event. I also wanted to thank Conservation Nebraska for helping plan this event, as well as handling the registration for us. So how we're going to do this, we have actually 5 speakers today. But before I do the introductions, I'd like to just get a better idea of the audience. And I'd like to know, are there any HVAC contractors in the audience? 2? Okay, great. Great, thank you for coming. The homeowners? Most of you? Any renters at all? All right. It's good that how about landlords? Any landlords here besides Kurt? Here? Great. How many of you actually have installed a heat pump in your home? So thank you. So how we're going to work this, need to advance the slides here. The workshop program, we're just going to rotate across these tables for speakers. And as I said, we've got 5 speakers today, and we've allocated a few minutes after each presentation for questions. So feel free to ask those questions. We hope to end at 11:30, if not sooner. We'll see how many questions we have. And after the event, if those interested can see the church has installed 5-ton commercial heat pumps. You can look at that outside, as well as our electric backup and our electric water heater, heat pump water heater, if you'd like, after the meeting. So let me begin with our speakers. Our first speaker is Ken Haar. He's the former city council member and former Nebraska state legislature for District 21 here in Lincoln. Ken's main focus in the legislature was education, climate change, and wind and solar renewable energy. And he is also a strong advocate, heat pump advocate. Following Ken will be Ben Shobe. He was elected to the Lincoln City Council in 2017 and re-elected in 2021. Originally from Kentucky, he has lived in Lincoln since 1998 and is a program analyst for the Nebraska Department of Labor. Benny holds an MA in sociology from Western Kentucky University and served on numerous boards and commissions prior to his election. Benny enjoys telling people that Lincoln has a climate action plan and looks forward to moving forward with many of the initiatives at the city level while encouraging individual and residential engagement. And I'd like to add that we would not have the city and LES combo incentive program that you'll learn about later in the program without his strong leadership in getting that implemented. Benny will be followed by Kim Morrow as Chief Sustainability Officer for the City of Lincoln. Kim works to transition our community to a climate-smart future. She leads a wide variety of decarbonization and climate resiliency initiatives that aim to make our community more equitable, bolster our economy, improve environmental health, and make Lincoln an even better place to call home. Kim will be followed by Mark Skolnick. He has served as manager of energy services for the Lincoln Electric System since June of 2007. The department is charged with providing comprehensive and customer experience and solutions for the City of Lincoln's industrial, commercial, businesses, and residential customers. His team is also responsible for administering the utility's energy efficiency, demand response, customer-owned renewables, and emergency technology programs. An Omaha native, Mark holds a Bachelor of Science in Education and a Master's of Education Administration degrees from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. He currently serves as a member of the Electric Power Research Institute's Electric Vehicles Advisory Council and president of the Kiwanis Club of Lincoln Center. We will end with another heat pump advocate, Kurt Donaldson. He installed his first air source heat pump in 1975 and first geothermal system in 1985. He continues to own and manage rental properties with a variety of HVAC systems from 2014 to present. He has coordinated the installation of geothermal and air source heat pumps here at the Unitarian Church of Lincoln with a benefit of a 25 kilowatt photovoltaic system. Net energy cost for the church in 2024 should be under 50 cents per square foot. So with that, we'll move to Ken and his presentation.
Did you want us to use the mic? Because you
Yes.
said it's going to be recorded.
Yeah.
Okay, well, there we are. 2 A's in the har. That's fine. Well, thank you very much for coming today. We're really thrilled with the crowd that's here. I want to thank the Nebraska Farmers Union and the Unitarian Church for doing all the printing, you see. And then, of course, Kim brought her own, but wanted to thank them. And then everybody at the tables here who has made this heat pump project work. And I'm going to call him Benny because he's a good friend of mine. But Benny put money in the budget for the biennial budget, $500,000 for the heat pump project. So thank you so much for that. And one thing that Kurt didn't include that I think you need to know about Kurt, and maybe he'll mention it, he's really responsible in many ways for the fact that the Lincoln Public Schools have heat pumps, I think, for all their buildings now, probably. And I think, as he said the other day, if you look at all the schools together, it's one of the largest ground source heat pump projects in the country. And then Kim and everybody at these two tables has been really important in this. Then I want to say quickly that Chris and I bought a new Bolt, and so did Kim. And so if you'll stay afterwards, Kim and I are going to have a drag race in the church in the church parking lot if you want to stay for that. We'll see. We'll see. Okay. I would like to, whoops, this one. Okay. I'd like to start with just my own story. A couple years, well, it was in 2020, our whole HVAC system, we have a 20-year-old house, was starting to get creaky. And so Chris and I decided to go with a ground source, not a ground source, but just a air source heat pump. And I'm going to show you a couple slides quickly. The red line shows where we changed. And look at the change in those shapes. The blue is the amount of natural gas that we used seasonally. And as you'd expect, the first 2 years you can see we use a lot of natural gas in the winter. And then as you get over to the 2 years with the heat pumps, you can see that those peaks are still in the winter, but the area is much smaller. And from just these 2 years, we saved 52% in natural gas usage, which makes us feel that we're not just talking the talk about climate change, but we're walking the walk. Whoops, I'm always going the wrong. Now this is our electrical usage over those 2 years. And as you'd expect, the first 2 years, the big peaks are in summertime. But look at the last 2 years. We have another peak in the winter. And I'll show you why in a minute. But as Mark will probably mention, this is causing problems. It's two sides of the coin. We want heat pumps, but it makes it a little bit more difficult to generate electricity because the peaks are coming at different times of the year. Now this is a map of Lincoln's temperatures. And right now our heat pump operates anytime the temperature is over 20 degrees. It's the red line. So you can see that that in Lincoln, Nebraska, and I don't have the most efficient air source heat pump, but most of the time, the air source heat pump gives us the heat we need in our home. And so that's the good news. So I'd like you to take, hopefully you picked up one of these little folders. Did you get one?
Yeah.
Here. Anybody else not get one of those little brochures? Could you maybe grab some and hand them out?
Yeah, can you get
Really, this brochure is all you need to know. It's kind of it's kind of a capsulation of everything you're going to hear today in much, much more detail. But the theme of this really is don't wait until your air conditioner breaks or your HVAC system breaks. Don't wait. Do some planning and educating yourself ahead of time. And then inside it talks about, and again, you'll hear more about this, why you shouldn't wait, who to call. And right now, Mark Skolnick with LES will be, I'm giving you his phone number. And he said if he can't answer the question, he'll pass it along to other staff members. So really, we want to have some sources that you can go to. Could I have one too? Okay. Some sources to go to. So if you look at that, if you open it up, first of all, a heat pump. Actually, you have a lot of heat pumps in your house already. If you have a refrigerator, it just moves heat from the inside to the outside, from the inside of the refrigerator to your room. And if you have an air conditioner, it's really a heat pump. It moves heat from the inside of your house to outside. But usually when we use the word heat pump, we're talking about a device that will cool your house in the summer and heat it in the winter. It goes both ways. It's almost like an air conditioner, but also an air conditioner in reverse. If you want to know all the details of how it works, just Google it and you can get into the compressors, et cetera, and how that works. But then a big thing in Orange, a heat pump is more efficient than an electric or gas furnace because a heat pump moves air. It takes electricity, but it moves air. Whereas if you have a gas furnace, it burns, it creates heat, and the older electric furnaces create heat, you know, or the little heater you have maybe where the strip in there turns red because you're running electricity through it, resistance heat. That's creating heat. The best way to do it is to move heat, and that's what an air pump does. So it's more efficient. And then on the right-hand side, again, it shows you the summer operation and the winter operation. It's a little more complicated, of course, than just an air conditioner. And for those days in the winter when it gets below 20 degrees on mine, then I have a gas furnace backup. But if you picked up all the things that were handed out, a lot of experimentation now is going on with heat pumps that will go to a much lower temperature. So yeah, I'd encourage you to read those. I'm not going to go over those at this time. So does it work in Lincoln? That's the question that most often comes. And I've heard from people that some contractors, not to be, badmouth them, but some contractors would say, don't use a heat pump in Lincoln because, it works really well in Florida where it doesn't get that cold, but it doesn't work in Lincoln. Yeah, it works in Lincoln and also Minnesota, if you look at those handouts. And they're getting better and better all the time. So why plan ahead? And that's really the theme of all of this. Educate yourself in advance. If you've ever owned a house long enough and it's 103 degrees and the air conditioner goes out, you don't say, okay, I'm going to take the next week and I'm going to research and I'm going to find the best deal and I'm going to decide to do this. You want action right now. So We know that that happens. Also with the furnace, if it's 20 degrees below zero and your furnace goes out, you call the contractor right away and you make some pretty quick decisions. So we're urging you today to learn about heat pumps so that when we're not saying get rid of your old furnace and your old air conditioner and replace it right now. We're saying when things go bad, you will know what you're talking about and you will have done some research into it. Now, of course, here are the considerations that people have. First of all is cost. You know, we all look at the cost of these systems, and if you take some more time, you can not only look at the cost, but the long-term cost of your system. Another thing besides your pocketbook that if you give yourself time are the incentives that are out there. For example, LES gives various incentives, and Mark will talk about that. The heat pump project that the city is doing right now that Benny funded, basically, is going to give incentives for installing heat pumps, and it can make a great deal of difference. Some of these run as high as $1,800, I believe, on a heat pump. And then probably starting the beginning of next year, maybe the end of this year, we'll be distributing the money from the Inflation Reduction Act. And there are some big refunds and incentives to not just get an electric heat pump, but really to go all electric, including things like if you have to upgrade your electrical service for a heat pump or whatever, the IRA will have incentives for that. Again, don't know, we're not encouraging you right now to get rid of everything that's not electric and install electric stuff. But when stuff goes out, you need to be aware of the incentives and the rebates. For example, when I got this new Bolt, at the point of sale, we got a $7,500 reduction. So we got a brand new car for $26,000, all electric. And that was a rebate that exists right now from the federal government. So if you give yourself time and you think about this, you'll get in touch with the incentives. Then there's a whole thing of availability and timing. Don't just get rid of your air conditioner now, but if it's starting to fail, don't wait until you have to, because then what you want may not even be available. Now that's changing as more and more people want heat pumps. Industry is reacting. And then finally, which has become a big thing for Chris and me for sure, is just the whole ethical issue of climate change and pollution. When you burn natural gas, you're putting off carbon dioxide, nitrous oxides, benzene, carbon monoxide, particulate matter, and so on. And so I see, you may disagree, this is my opinion, natural gas will be a bridge to the future for many of us. And then I would finally show you my last slide here. Whoops, what did I push?
Point towards that.
Oh,
Maybe.
okay. Here was kind of my adventure. We looked at the price of heat pumps, and we decided on that second one where the smiley face is, which was more than just getting a very efficient gas furnace. We decided to go that way. But I went with a gas backup furnace for when things get really cold, and for about the same cost now, we could probably have gone with an electric backup, and so we would be all electric when it comes to our HVAC system. When mine goes out, I'll have an electric heat pump and electric furnace backup. So in conclusion, my opinion is in the future we're going to electrify everything. So when your system goes out, know what you're talking about, think about it, ask questions, educate yourselves so that you can make a better decision, which some people might still want gas. There are places where electricity is so expensive where gas probably still makes sense. But my grandchildren, if they ever buy homes, will probably have all electric homes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ken. We'll pass that to- Are there any questions for Ken? If
Here's some.
oh yeah.
Well, is there one single source that the city can find out about all of the incentives and credits?
Yeah. Okay, the question is there one source where you can find out about all the incentives and so on? And Mark, right now I would say the phone numbers that we've given for LES, if Mark doesn't have your answer or one of his staff member doesn't have an answer, they will know where to point you. Skolnick. Yeah, LES. It's on the back. It's on the back of the little flyer. Any other? There was another question.
One more.
Yeah.
Those incentives you spoke about also include solar panels?
Right now, the cities does not. Now, Mark, does LES's sustainability program does have some, and when does the federal give some now?
30% federal tax credit with no cap.
Okay, so
LES has a capacity payment based on the size of the system. So yes, there are incentives for solar.
and when the IRA comes out, there will be even more. And by the way, you can stack these. If the federal government is giving a certain incentive, a certain rebate, whatever, and LES is giving one, you can stack those on top of each other. So get out your calculator.
Well, we have a lot to cover, so I think we'll move on to Benny, and there will be time at the end to ask additional questions. So Benny?
Thank you, Gene. This works.
Kim, can you advance the slide a couple times? Just advance the slide a couple. You have to point towards the AV. There.
Ooh, look.
That's good. Yeah.
That still weirds me out a little bit. Good morning. My name is Benny Shobe, BENNIESHOBE. And I am very lucky, very blessed, very honored to be a member of your Lincoln City Council. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to do this. In the essence of efficiency and energy conservation, I'm not going to say a whole lot. Many of the things I want to talk about, Kim will talk about in her presentation. I'm mostly focusing on trying to represent you and the climate action plan. When I'm at home at night, curled up in the fetal position, sometimes crying, sometimes not crying, I think about the future and what's going to be here, and it scares me. And then I think, what can I do about it? So I end up never throwing any trash away. Everything's recyclable, and all these things. And some of them are mentally challenging. Then I get up and I get dressed, get showered, stop crying, and I get to be your city councilman for a few hours. And we have a lovely thing called the Climate Action Plan. Kim will talk about that more later. And I keep saying, what can we do? Now, I'm like this guy in the corner here. I'm a solar panel guy. How come we can't put solar panels on every city building downtown? And I get told, we'll get there. Go slow. We'll get there. I'm going, I'm struggling with this. I don't want to go slow. And so I'm looking for something to do in this climate action plan to make some inroads, to do something positive. And I get to meet these two young guys. They come up to me, and they go, ooh, can we talk about heat pumps? And so I want to take this moment to thank both of them. I wanted to do something. We have a lovely climate action plan. It's a great document, but what are we going to do? Let's do some action from the climate action plan. Thank you both for giving me an opportunity to do this. This was something we can make a positive step on this. That actually almost exhausts everything I want to say. I get to do the politics of this. So it's negotiating, trying to do trade-offs with my fellow city council people. What can we do that will have the most benefit, have the least impact on the budget, and move us in the right direction? I can somewhat influence things that the city does. But the climate action plan is also your action plan, and that's why we're here today. There are things that you as residents of our community can do. We want to talk more about those over the next few minutes, next few days, next few years. We can do things to make our climate better, to make our planet better, to leave it better than we found it. It took us a long time to get here. We're not going to fix it all this weekend, but we don't get to sit on our hands and do nothing. Let's do something today. Thank you again for giving me the opportunity to do this. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you today. We're going to keep trying to push forward. One of the things that's really good is that the mayor, city council, city government now has an environmental, I'm going to get the title wrong, Chief Sustainability Officer. I got to work with this young woman and a young man named John Carlson. I said, I want to do these things, and they both helped me get it in the budget where it needed to be so we could do it. It's about teamwork, cooperation, and working together. And now here's the downside. I said I was going to stop talking, but give a politician a microphone. Do they ever stop? Almost everybody in the room is already in agreement with us or on board. They think it's a good idea. They want to know how. We have to help our friends in the community understand the importance of this. And our first instinct usually is to tell them, you have to do this. I have a younger sibling, and my sister says, I don't want you to tell me how to do things. I know how to do stuff. Stop telling me what to do. Here's what you need to do. She doesn't like hearing that. We have to come up with a better message and invite our friends to join us. Don't challenge them. Work with them, build positive relationships, and bring our friends and allies to create them as friends and allies, convert them. I encourage you to do that. Talk positively about it. Don't bully people. Don't yell at them. Don't say, you don't understand. You have to do this. Usually when people tell me you don't understand, I stop listening. And I'm sure you do too at some point. Find a better way to encourage people to join us in doing what we can to mitigate climate change and build a better community for everybody. With that, I'm going to stop talking and say, Gene, do I just hand it over or do I give it back to you?
Well,
I did the clicker
are there
already.
any questions for Benny? From
Questions, comments, accusations?
anybody? And if not, you can keep the. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Every few minutes we go, okay. I agree with you. Every few minutes we go, we'll get to it. We'll get to it. We're not getting to it. Yeah, thank you. I will do that. There's a young man over here. Hi, nice hat. Yeah. I understand what you're saying. So there's a little small thing. I can control. Yeah, sure. The gentleman asked me about the development at South 27th Street and Nebraska Parkway, where there used to be a Shopko, and there's currently an Arby's and an empty lot. Yeah. So I hear what you're saying, and there's a little bit of a hitch there. That is private property, privately owned by a private developer who wants to build a big apartment building. Pardon? Oh. So things like incentives from the city, like we did for the heat pump, we can incentivize that developer to do more. And we will work with them as they come forward with their plans, and we'll ask those questions. We can't force them, and it's not a city building. We can't do it ourselves. But we can say it's in your best interest. This is good for the community. This will improve your image. And we will try those things. We will do the best. And then LES and all the other, we're all at the same table. And sometimes we can't make people do it. We can't mandate it. That will end up spoiling the milk for everybody. But we can encourage and incentivize, and we will be doing those things.
Well, thank you. We'll have more questions at the end.
Yep.
And
Yeah, there was a
one
young woman
more
there.
question.
Yes. Hi. Yeah. Hi. Deb and Mark. I think someone of you guys will talk about that. That's coming later in the program. I'm not going to spoil that one. Guys, thank you. I'll be sitting here for a while. Ladies and gentlemen, friends in Roman, my friend Kim Morrow, Chief Sustainability Officer.
Benny, you can keep that here.
Good Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. This is such a great turnout this morning. We're happy to talk about heat pumps with you all. Heat pumps, heat pumps. Yeah, I got it. So I want to talk about the city program that we have designed for our heat pump incentives. But before I get to all those details, I wanted to just say a word about our climate action plan. In case you aren't aware, we did adopt a climate action plan in 2021, 3 years ago. And it lays out a set of 118 actions for us to take as a whole community to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and increase our resilience to extreme weather events. And it is a plan for the whole community. It's not just for municipal government. So I want to underscore something Benny just said, that this is a plan for our whole community, and it's more than the city or any one of us can accomplish on our own. So I would encourage you to take a look at it. You can see it online if you go to lincoln.ne.gov and search for the Climate Action Plan, you'll find it. But there are lots of ways that all of us can play a role, and actually installing heat pumps is one way that we can get involved in the Climate Action Plan. But just to say a quick word about the way the climate is changing and the kind of things that Lincoln will be facing in the future. We're looking at, by 2050, our weather will be on average about 5 degrees warmer throughout the year. And some days that might seem like a good thing, but I always try to liken it to when you have a body temperature, when you have a fever. And if you just have a couple of degrees above your normal body temperature, you know that something's really wrong. And if it's 5 degrees above normal, you're probably going to the hospital, right? Because it's all those interconnected systems are off balance. So it's kind of more akin to that when we're talking about ecological systems and how they're all interconnected. We're going to have more heat. 44 days annually is predicted with a heat index of over 100 degrees. And that has real implications for public health. Excuse me. Extreme heat is the most lethal climate impact, actually, more than flooding, more than hurricanes. It's actually extreme heat. We are predicted to have more precipitation in winter and spring, and more precipitation falling in the form of rain rather than snow, because it will be a little bit warmer, and so precipitation that would have fallen as snow in previous years is going to be more likely to fall as rain. And then we're also going to have an increase in heavy precipitation events. So you've probably experienced some of those extreme downpours where all of a sudden we just get a ton of rain falling in a short amount of time. So that we'll probably be seeing more of that. We did an assessment of the risks that we face as a city, and these are the top risks that came through. The first 3 are the most important, and they all have to do with water. So we're going to experience more problems of having both too much water and not enough water at different times. And you can even see in the last few years, we're already swinging between these extremes, right? In 2019, we had the bomb cyclone event. We had major flooding problems. We almost had a water crisis here because our water pumps went out in Ashland. And then a few years later, much of the state was plunged into an extreme drought situation. So these, we're used to extremes in Nebraska, but those extremes are going to get more extreme and switch back and forth even more. So to say a word about our greenhouse gas emissions, this is where our greenhouse gas emissions came from as of 2020. So the largest sector is electricity for now, but I will say that piece of the pie has been decreasing a lot because of the great efforts that LES has done to add renewable energy to their portfolio. They have actually reduced emissions 36% since 2010, I believe it is. So they're making a lot of progress. Our second largest category is transportation, followed by natural gas, and then miscellaneous. And this shows our greenhouse gas emissions since 2011. You can see they are going down, but they're not going down far enough or fast enough to meet the kind of global targets the world has set to keep global warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius. So the Climate Action Plan, let's see, I think it's the next slide, yep. These are the 8 areas that the Climate Action Plan is divided into. So these are the sectors that that I'm working toward and that we're working toward as a city to address. So energy, transportation, economic development, protections means basically climate resilience, protecting our population, local food, natural climate solutions, waste, and community engagement. So the way that that we see climate action, it's more than just, I mean, obviously reducing greenhouse gas emissions is extremely important, but it's also more than that. It's really a holistic approach to how do we create economic opportunity? How do we relocalize our food system? How do we protect public health? How do we engage our community? It's almost like we're in a crisis situation and we have the opportunity to reinvent ourselves or to improve our relationship with nature and with one another. And so it's really a broad view of how we do that. There is a big, hairy, audacious goal, as they say in the Climate Action Plan, to reduce greenhouse gas emissions 80% by 2050. So that is what we are working toward. We also have some other goals in there. LES set a goal that they will have net zero emissions from electricity generation by 2040. We want to have our municipal buildings be net zero by 2040, and we are working to transition our fleet, the vehicles that the city owns, to 100% alternative fuel by 2040. These are a couple of the projects that we are currently working on. We're deep into a climate pollution reduction grant program from the EPA. The flyer that I handed out has more information. We're currently doing some town halls and a survey that we would invite you to participate in. We're asking for residents' feedback on some of the priority measures we could take to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So love to have your input on that. We also adopted a local food system plan last summer, also adopted an EV readiness plan last summer. We're about to start on a project to develop an energy management plan for our municipal buildings. We have a biochar initiative, working on decarbonizing our fleet. It's just a lot, a lot of fun stuff going on. So to get into more specifics about the heat pump program, we announced this program on January 4th, last month. And actually, that's the public part of the program. Last year, what we started with is we had a consultant do some study and analysis for us. And so I wanted to share just a few things that the consultants found in their study that helped us design the program. So they analyzed the housing stock that we have in Lincoln and our demographics. We have 126,000 housing units in Lincoln. On the upper right, you can see 58% are owner-occupied and 42% are renter-occupied. So we have a really significant rental population in town. It's important to keep that in mind. But 58% of our homes are single-family. And let's see, I won't go through all of these, but under existing HVAC, you can see 64% of our homes use utility gas, 34% use electricity, and 2% other sources. So, not surprisingly, most HVAC systems that people have are using natural gas for their heating needs. This is residential energy use across Nebraska. You can see this is just energy usage, so this would be electricity and natural gas, but space heating is there in the blue. So 33% of our energy use goes to space heating, and the red section is water heating. So there's a lot of energy going into heating needs across the state. That means there's an opportunity to make some changes there too. So this slide shows the comparison in fuel costs and life cycle, 15-year life fuel costs between an air source heat pump or a air conditioning natural gas setup, which would be a more traditional setup. So you can see in the table that the annual fuel costs for an air source heat pump, granted fuel cost means electricity cost also. So that would be $729 compared to $819 for a traditional system. And the 15-year life cost would be $10,935 for an air source heat pump compared to $12,285 for a traditional system. In terms of the carbon dioxide reduction, the annual reduction from an air source heat pump is 2.87 tons of carbon dioxide, And over a 15-year lifespan, that would equate to 43. No, that's not over 15 years. It's just lifetime. I'm not sure what a lifetime span is, but 43 tons of CO2 over a lifetime. So the average difference in cost between the two systems is approximately $1,700, and the 15-year difference in energy cost is approximately $1,350. And so here again, the annual CO2 reduction for just one air source heat pump would be 2.87 tons. But if, as we were thinking of designing this program, if we could get 100 people to convert to air source heat pumps, that would equal 287 tons of CO2. Or if we got 250, that would be 710 tons. And then you can see the equivalent numbers over the lifetime that adds up. It's still not significant numbers compared to all of our greenhouse gas emissions as a community, but it's still an important step in the right direction. So to describe our particular program in detail, it launched January 4th. The goals are to help residents save money, to increase home heating and cooling efficiency, and to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So the city is offering a $1,000 incentive for the general population, or a $3,000 incentive for low and moderate income residents. And whether someone qualifies for low and moderate income, they have to be their annual income has to be 80% of the area median income, which I don't have that figure right at my fingertips, but it's a federal guideline. We do have a worksheet on our website. It depends how large your household size is, but you can look at the table and see if you might qualify. And then you could work with our team in urban development, the urban development department, to qualify for that incentive. But either of these can be stacked with LES's existing $800 incentive and the federal tax rebate of 30%. So low-income folks could get a maximum of $3,800 plus a 30% tax credit, or $1,800 plus the 30%. So it's a pretty generous incentive altogether. Who is eligible? Homeowners or single-family rental property owners in the city of Lincoln have to be within city boundaries. We decided to start this program just with single family at this point, so we certainly want to approach the commercial sector and the multifamily sector, but we're just starting, even though it's $500,000, we expect the funds to go fairly quickly, so we're starting this way. And the second bullet is what I just mentioned. The website, if you think you might be low and moderate income, go to lincoln.ne.gov/housing support, and you can look up that table and see if you qualify. So what's included? Purchase and installation of air source heat pumps. Heat pumps must replace an existing heat pump or air conditioner that is at least 5 years old, or it can replace a gas furnace. But please consult with a qualified HVAC contractor to find out what is the best option for your particular home. And we do have heat pump ratings that must be met for the program. You can see a SEER2 of 15.2 and an EAR2 of 12. Those are just high efficiency ratings. Mark could explain more about what those mean if you're interested. So what's not included, any home outside of Lincoln city limits, commercial, multifamily housing. This is also not for ground source heat pumps. Ground source heat pumps are awesome, but again, we just decided to focus for now on air source heat pumps. And new residential is not included as well right now. So how does the program work? It's super easy, thanks to the design that LES already had in place. So basically, you would contact your HVAC contractor and say, hey, I'd like to put in a new heat pump. And your contractor takes care of the rest, basically. They're enrolled in a program through LES, and LES will give the incentive to them, and your discount will just show up as a discount on your invoice that you would get from your HVAC contractor. So you can go to les.com/SEP to see the list of participating HVAC contractors and more information about the program. You can also email sep@les.com with any questions. So you would just contact one of those HVAC contractors to get a bid. You might want to get a couple of bids. And then you just install your new heat pump and you're ready to go. In terms of the funds we have available, the total funds, after we paid the consultant for the initial study that I mentioned, we have $457,000 to give away to Lincoln residents. And this table is as of Thursday. We've given out, I don't have the actual number. I think it's between 15 and 20, I believe, total number of incentives so far. The blue is how much we've given out, and the orange is how much is left. So you can see there's still quite a lot left to go, and we'd love to give some of that to you if you qualify. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me, or I'm happy to take any questions now. Yes.
How are you going to know if indeed you increase the number of people putting in heat pumps rather than just subsidizing better people who were already going to do it anyway?
Right. Well, we've asked LES to track several metrics for us, and one of the things they're tracking is what is the person replacing, what appliance is the person replacing. So we'll see if they replaced an older heat pump, which obviously is, well, that's fine. If they replace an older heat pump, they're still getting a more efficient, newer model, or if they replaced an air conditioner. Yeah. So we'll look at those numbers at the end of the program. Yes.
The federal rebate, you call it, is that a tax credit?
It's a tax credit.
Refundable or non-refundable tax credit?
Non-refundable. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, we did just get that question about a week ago, actually. And yeah, there are amazing systems. It's just that ground source heat pumps require a lot more disturbance to the land, the property where they're being installed. It's a lot more of an undertaking to install that kind of system. It's also not going to be so much accessible to lower income folks. And we wanted to design a program that could really reach the largest number of people and to be sort of easiest to implement. It could be sometime in the future we do a program that includes, or a separate program that focuses on ground source, but yes.
I think the federal would cover it though, wouldn't it? The 30%.
Okay. There's still a tax credit for that. And LES has an incentive for that too.
One more question.
Okay. Yes.
Is any of this applicable to like nonprofits, like churches?
Unfortunately, no. It's only residential at this time. Mhm. Okay, thank you. I'll turn it over to Mark Skolnick now.
Thank you, Kim. So as I stand up here, I can only imagine what Taylor Swift must feel like at a concert, looking out about this group. I mean, it's amazing. Look at all these people here. I'm blown away. Well, no, there's no resemblance, or Travis for that matter. I can't purport to be Travis, but to look out here and to see how many people are here to learn more about heat pumps is pretty incredible. Has anybody in here heard of the law of diffusion of innovation? The law of diffusion of innovation. You've read about it? The pioneer in that was Everett Rogers, 1962, wrote a book about diffusion of innovation theory, and it's how technology is adopted. And it follows the same pattern, and it doesn't matter what the technology is. And I mention that because that's what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with the technology. And the theory goes this way, and it's almost bookwork, that about 2.5% of any given population are early adopters. They're the ones who will show up at 4 a.m. when Apple is about to announce its new iPhone, and they'll stand in line at 4 a.m. because they want to be the first to get the new iPhone, or whatever it might be, right? And that just happens, and it's because they want to be first. They want to have the latest and greatest. The next cohort is about 13% of the population, and those are innovators. Those are the people that see the bigger picture of that innovation. And what we have in this room are a ton of innovators, and I'll point some out. Don Cox, is the epitome of an innovator. He brought with him from California the vision of what electric vehicles could be. And he's let a couple of people drive, no, not a couple hundred people drive his EVs. There is no better definition of an innovator than Don Cox when it comes to electric vehicles, but I see others. I see Clark DeVries, who has solar at his home, who is a huge proponent of ground source heat pumps, who oversaw the installation of ground source to serve the state capitol. He is an innovator. Marilyn McNabb is an innovator. She has solar on her home. She provided leadership on the LES administrative board. There is no greater definition of an innovator than Marilyn McNabb. This gentleman over here, it's already been mentioned, is an innovator. He saw what ground source heat pumps could do, and while through leadership, every public school in this district is geothermal. Ken Haar, Gene Hanlon, they're innovators. They saw what technology can do, and they have decided to promote the heck out of air source heat pumps. And while Councilman Show will say it wasn't his money that he spent, because he knows it's the taxpayers' money, he uses his political capital and leadership to prioritize air source heat pumps. That's leadership, okay? So you've got the 2.5% early adopters, the ones that'll stand in line at 3 a.m. to get the latest and greatest, and then you have the next 13% that are innovators. What happens is you don't get mainstream adoption, that's the early majority, which represents about 34% of a population, until you cross the tipping point. You cannot get there without crossing the chasm, okay? Jeffrey Moore wrote a book called Crossing the Chasm. In other words, in any given market, about 16%, you can expect that they're going to adopt technology. You're going to have your early adopters and your innovators, but it's going to go nowhere unless you cross the chasm. That's when the early majority feels like they can jump in. Okay? So with EVs, we're still in that first phase. We're trying to get to the, now what's crossing the chasm mean? It means the cost is too high, I can't afford that. I don't believe you. I don't believe you. I've heard myths. I've heard that heat pumps can't work in Lincoln, okay? Let me talk about a really important group of people that will help us cross the chasm. Our trade allies. We have trade allies here, right? Okay? These are the men and women that talk to men and women who are looking to replace their existing system. And they're usually not very pleased on a hot day. Right? I'm sorry, as much as we love our heat pumps, most people would say, what the heck, you had 50 people here on a Saturday to hear about heat pumps? Because there's nothing exciting about them. Now an EV, that's different. There's something exciting about an EV. But the fact of the matter is that when it's time to replace the system, maybe folks will jump on Google and they'll see who they ought to call. But it's the men and women who are talking to them at the point of decision that have the biggest influence. And the thing that we're the proudest of at LES is having a relationship with just about all of our trade allies, because we know that's where the decision's being made. And we put our trust in them. And they make it simple. People like simple. People like simple. And so they provide an instant rebate, and we prioritize getting them their money back as soon as possible. So thank you to the trade allies that are here and the ones that aren't, because they make it all possible. Okay, so this is how it works. Let me talk to you a little bit about air source heat pumps, and I'm not going to try not to repeat everything you've just heard because there's a lot of good information that's already been shared, but I did want to share a couple numbers that I ran. Notice, first of all, that a heat pump and an air conditioner almost look identical because they pretty much are, and Ken kind of mentioned that. You will see a heat pump sometimes raised up because it defrosts, so it needs a place for some of that. You know, as it defrosts, it can drip down and not be on the ground when it does that, but they're really one and the same, except the heat pump is capable of heating much more efficiently. And so the first system here is an air conditioner and gas furnace. And this is the annual therms that are used and the electric costs. And that would be that's the air conditioner paired with a gas furnace and the projected CO2 emissions for that system. And we're assuming this is an 80% efficient gas furnace. We know that you can get more efficient systems up to 95 plus percent. And then that's the latest therm cost from Black Hill, 74 cents, and about a nickel a kilowatt hour from LES for winter rates. And then if you combine that, if you replace that air conditioner with an air source heat pump and keep your gas furnace, your electricity consumption will rise to about 6,000 kilowatt hours for heating. That's just for heating, 190 therms. So you could see a pretty dramatic decrease in gas and an annual heating cost of $364, $110 savings annually, and a pretty dramatic drop in CO2 emissions. So that's air conditioner and gas furnace versus air source heat pump and gas furnace. If we do an air conditioner and electric furnace, you can see you have a significant electric load, 15,000 kilowatt hours a year, $750 annual heating cost, just heating, and over 18,000 pounds of CO2. When you switch that air conditioner with a heat pump, look at the dramatic decrease in electric consumption, over half, and you cut your annual heating cost by $450. And your CO2 emissions drop precipitously to about a third. The technology works. Technology works. First one went in 1975, so this isn't novel. The heat pump's been around a long time. Now what is more recent is the advances, the variable speed equipment that makes it more efficient, okay? It's improved. They do extract heat in Minnesota. They do extract heat in Maine. But you do need an auxiliary heater. The best case in point is what we just endured 2 weeks ago, when we might as well have been living at the North Pole, right? Okay, the heat pump will not provide sufficient heating in those elements. And if you've been studying the patterns of weather, that seems to be the new winter normal. Warm Decembers, a polar vortex that knocks your socks off for 2 weeks, and then a return to warmer than normal weather, which we're about ready to go into, we are into, okay? So it's getting through the bitterly cold. The heat pump technologies aren't there to get us through minus 18 degrees. So you need auxiliary heat. You need auxiliary heat. So the Inflation Reduction Act has been mentioned as a way, because I talked about the crossing the chasm, and I talked about, first of all, there's the miseducation that folks have about heat pumps, that they don't work in really cold weather. Heat pump is an odd term because it doesn't explain that it's an air conditioner and a heat source, but whatever. But cost is another big one. So that's being addressed through the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed in 2022. The IRA's overall objectives were to invest in clean energy technologies, actually reduce healthcare costs. This is all at the highest levels of the act itself. But their energy-related objectives was to promote zero carbon generation and energy efficiency, promote electrification, and provide financial support targeted to low and moderate income households. Domestic manufacturing, right? You'll see that, particularly in some of the EV incentives. You need to get the rebate, they have to be domestically sourced minerals in the battery, and all has to be assembled here. And this is all trying to jumpstart technology and manufacturing supply chains here domestically. So as it relates to air source heat pumps, right now today, a 30% federal tax credit up to $2,000 when you purchase a heat pump that meets the minimum seasonal energy efficiency ratio, SEER, and those minimums are equivalent to what LES requires to get our incentive. So if you go to les.com and you see the requirements, and your trade ally, your contractor will know what those are as well, it shouldn't be a mystery to you. Now, the city, LES, and the city's combo of incentives is $1,800. So the federal tax credit really is based on your tax liability, which is different for everybody. If you have no tax liability, then the credit really provides you with nothing. It's not refundable. Somebody asks, is this refundable? No, you can't get money if you don't have the tax liability. But you definitely will get money if you meet the city's requirements and LES's requirements of $1,800. And from time to time, manufacturers have rebates. And then there is also, for financing, the Nebraska Department of Environment and Energy has a low interest loan. Now, I want to also mention, and here's another innovator. It was Kurt Donaldson that said a few years ago when we were doing our integrated resource plan at LES, you have to look at heat pump water heaters. You have to look at those. Those are impactful technologies, and you need to consider providing an incentive. And we ran the numbers, and he was right. 50% savings in electric use when you put one of these bad boys in. It uses the same technology as an air source heat pump. It transfers heat. You have to have the right space for it. It's a little bit larger unit, but they're really very capable technologies, and they work tremendously well. I took a warm shower today by a heat pump water heater, and it felt great. Felt great. Okay. LES has an SEP incentive of $500 when you purchase the heat pump water heater. It's also eligible for a tax credit, 30% up to $2,000. Now, Ken alluded to the fact that down the road, there will be an additional program, and it is a point of sale rebate program, not a tax credit, where you literally, if you meet the income guidelines, will get a rebate at point of sale for the purchase of any of these technologies. That is being funded by the federal government, but administered by the state energy office. And they are in the process of designing that program. It's a big lift because all of these are point of sale. That means they have to create a system that verifies what your income is and then works with the contractors to provide point of sale. That's a fairly large lift, and that's why it may be until early 2025 when this rebate program goes live. But it will obviously be a potential game changer in helping us cross the chasm. Here are some resources. If you want to learn more about electrification and the move towards advanced technologies, Rewiring America is a great resource. Energy Star, and all these others. Les.com is where you need to go to visit to learn more about heat pumps. I think Ken or somebody was trying to provide you my last name. Forget my last name. It's too hard to spell. Les.com is a lot easier. Just go there. But if you do need any assistance, my staff, myself, we're here for you. We're your public power provider. And with that, I'd be happy to turn it over to Kurt. And then we'll answer questions. Well, all right.
Well,
Yes.
Yeah, we can take questions.
Sir?
When you upgrade, could you go back to that?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I mean, there's some really interesting things there. You've got a rebate of $4,000 if you're in an older home that has a small service entry, right? Maybe it's, 60 amp service and you want to go to 100, 200. There's resources for that, for rewiring. I've got my daughter and son-in-law have knob tube wiring in their attic. They can't get that insulated. They'll have to rewire. Correct. So less than or equal to 80% AMI is up to 100%, and 81 to 150% area median income, 50% of those. So it is income based. Yes, sir.
Is there any idea of moving forward to like a progressive-based incentive program rather than just having a minimum SEER, since the SEER levels increase and you can get a bigger bang for your buck as a 20-SEER unit, a 14-SEER unit? Like, can you get more incentive?
We did have that, and we heard at one point before we switched over to meet the federal tax credit minimums, we lowered the amount for the minimum or the first cut, and then we had a little higher for the next cut, and we heard both good and bad on that. We decided let's make it simple to start with, and let's just do, you get $800 if you have a federal tax credit qualifying air source heat pump. Now for geothermal, we do have higher amount. I think it's $1,200 up to $1,500. But for the air source equipment, we decided just to go very simple, $800. Could we change that in the future? Sure. But again, we had feedback that said we like simple. Whereas some people said, well, you need to give a little more if somebody goes to a 20 or a 20. So they're both merit-based. We just decided to keep it simple as we started. Yes, ma'am.
So I'm just trying to figure out, when you just say blanket, 30% federal tax credit, that's a lot different than 30% federal tax credit up to $2,000 when the cost is $14,000.
Well, yeah, and you also want to look at the marginal cost too, because $14,000. So if you're replacing something, you're going to have to spend X number of dollars, right? So it's really, you're looking at the difference in cost, right? So if most people are going to wait till they're towards the end. I'm not saying you wait to the bitter end, but you're waiting towards the end. And now it's time for you to write that check. And you're going to write a check for either a minimum efficient air conditioner, or you're going to write a check for a heat pump, okay? And it's the difference between the two that you really want to look at, and how much money is available to close that gap. The difference is $1,700 is what we found in our study, and that's about right. So 30% up to $2,000 is one component, but then you add in the $1,800, while supplies last, of course. There's no question, that will close that gap. Okay? This is the federal tax credit, by the way, we're talking about. That means that you take 30% of the cost, and the federal tax credit cannot be more than $2,000. Yeah, no. And I can understand why this gets confusing. Today, anybody in this room can take a 30% federal tax credit, assuming you have a tax liability, right now. That was started last year, okay? And this will run till 2032, I believe. No income requirements, nothing. Nothing to do with income. The only thing that has to do with income is that rebate program I told you that isn't even out yet, okay? So you take 30% of the cost. If it exceeds $2,000, it's capped at $2,000. If it's less than $2,000, then that's what it is. And if afterwards we want to get together and talk in more specific, I'd be happy to do it, because it gets confusing. No, it won't be. No. No. It'll almost always be that full $2,000. I think you're right.
Well, we do have one more speaker.
Yes, I don't want to shortchange Kurt, so and then we'll answer more questions afterwards. Kurt? Here you go.
Give me a moment here. Give me a moment. Well, we'll try that. Doing this because I don't do stand-up. I tend to slouch. And this is bar height, 42 inches. Looks pretty good. I looked it up on the internet. All right, I've got one thing to do. I've got one.
Yeah, just advance it several times.
Yeah, help me out.
There you go, just keep pressing that.
All right.
There, yep. One more.
All right, there we go. All right, I have a slide because everybody has slides. Sure, yeah. All right, yeah, I have a slide because everybody has slides, but really I'm going to be working off of this sheet of paper here. Hopefully you picked this up because we could get more data on one piece of paper, and you need to be able to look at all of it without flipping through slides, so you can ignore that. Anyway, I am happy to be here because I've been able to learn quite a bit to get here today. I had to learn some things. And I do have some breaking news that should go at the top of the sheet here. As I looked back on my history with heat pumps, I realized that I'll be talking about my own heat pump experience, but that in 1975, I had actually had installed in a house in Lincoln a heat pump in 1975, which is 49 years ago. An early adopter, yes. Except I didn't have to take the chances. So yesterday I made a cold call on that house just to see how things were going, because I really hadn't been back there for the present owner. And a nice man came to the door and said that I'd worked on the house 50 years ago, and I asked him, well, how's your heat pump doing? And at that point I didn't know what to expect. I thought he might say, well, you know, the first thing we did when we moved in here 30 years ago was to tear that damn thing out and put in a gas furnace. I just didn't know. But he responded that he still had the heat pump running. They'd replaced it once. He couldn't quite remember when, so I went to Building and Safety, and they had replaced it in 1975, the inside unit and the outside unit, which is 41 years. And I think there probably was an outside unit replaced before then, but he didn't remember it, and he'd been there 30 years. So the question is, do they last? Well, I guess that one does, and that's anecdotal data, of course. But if you put enough anecdotal data together, you get anecdotal stories, you get data. And that's what I have in the rest of the sheet here is data from my own experience on mostly rental properties with 3 different HVAC sources. And I'll just go through them very, very briefly, but I'll say these are all affordable housing, all single family and duplexes, all over 100 years old, that all have been upgraded with insulation as best I could get in the wall space. All the gas furnaces except one are 90% condensing furnaces. All the air source heat pumps have electric backup. I don't believe in gas backup, and I can go into that in more detail. But anyway, starting out on the natural gas furnaces, what I've done is I have gotten all the individual gas and electric costs, but I'm not listing them here. They're just combined electricity and gas for the entire unit, and that means lighting, computers, hot water heating, everything. And to come up with a square footage for each unit, then you come up with an operating cost per square foot, your total energy operating cost per square foot per unit, and that's a useful number. That's what Lincoln Public Schools does to see how they're performing on their buildings, and they have a range in costs from about $1.40 a square foot with the two remaining gas schools, down to about 50 cents a square foot for one of the renovated middle schools. You can have quite a bit of difference, but anyway, you see here there's the cost per square foot difference from $234 a square foot down to $171. And the on the 2346 South 17th Street, that is a 648 square foot house, and the high bill there can be explained simply that it has got a large amount of wall area to the square footage area. That's I think what explains that. I won't go into any great detail on the rest of those, but you can see the costs range from $234 to $171. Now, going down onto the air source heat pumps, you see that we have a cost range from $124 down to 83 cents a square foot. And this is interesting to show that actual results may vary. And I just want to talk about why that is on a couple of these things. And as I look at that, one of the biggest culprits of high costs with air source heat pump is that if these are all electric units, the electric water heater is a killer, a resistance water heater. I'm probably spending more on the water heater than I am for heating the property or the tenants. There is one here, and I'll get to that down in the geothermal source, that the water heater is killing it. Anyway, when we get down to 1445 North 25th Street, that's kind of my star of the air source heat pumps. It's a place that I'm working on right now. But as you can see, we've gotten square foot costs down to 107 for the downstairs unit and 88 cents for the upstairs unit. And no. Yeah, it's on the sheet because I couldn't get it on one PowerPoint. And I'll just mention this duplex at 1445 North 25th Street was built in 1888. It's my oldest house, and the reason for the difference between the 88 cents and the $1.07 per square foot is that the heat pump water heater is on the meter for the downstairs unit. That's just the way it is. It only costs $120 a year to operate that water heater, so people get along with it. But very happy with the performance on those units. 2900 R Street is a similar situation. It's second floor unit, 83 cents a square foot with air source heat pump, and the gas water heater is in the lower unit. So they've got a pretty good deal. And you might ask, if these are upstairs units, is the downstairs heating the upstairs? Well, a bit, but in all the units, I've actually insulated in between the first floor and the second floor. Sometimes as much as 14 inches of insulation, but always R19 between the units just for sound control. The ceilings float, they're separated. So, done what I can. And anyway, so that we see that the average square cost on the air source is $1.03 versus $1.89 a square foot. Now we get down to my favorites, the ground source heat pumps. I've never been much of an evangelist for air source heat pumps because I believe in ground source heat pumps. Well, I've got one in my own house and then one at a duplex in 2906 that I put in the mid-1990s. And we see on the first floor of 2904 a cost per square foot of a lackluster $1.52 a square foot. The second floor, a mediocre $1.24 a square foot. Not good, and I think there are several reasons for that. You cannot escape how tenants operate the house, for one thing. And upstairs, I have a man who, when he gets home from wherever he is, he takes off his shirt. summer and winter. And the thermostat is set at 83 degrees. And this is the truth, and then cooler in the summer. Of course, he likes his air conditioning. In the downstairs is a family of a mother and 3 children who come from a South Seas island. And so they've found this place, you know, and it also has resistance electric heating, which I think, again, kills it. The next time I change out the water heater in the unit, I certainly will put in a heat pump water heater, even though I don't pay the utilities. Anyway, but then there's 2860 R Street, which is my own house in geothermal. 1985, I did a geothermal system there, and it's totally insulated. It has a heat pump water heater, and it has good numbers of 71 cents a square foot, which is lower, as you would hope, than any of the air source heat pumps. You would hope that, but although the difference is not that great between 71 and 107 compared to what you have to pay to install them. So, and so you find, in fact, by the time you average out the good and the bad with the geothermal systems, the geothermals wind up averaging more than the air source heat pumps, which shouldn't be. It shouldn't be that way. Anyway, so coming down to the conclusions, if you look at that, as we say on this sheet up there, I believe they can argue that the air source units operate at 54% of the cost of natural gas units, or a differential of 86 cents a square foot. And so my performance numbers between natural gas and heat pumps are better than have been argued by these people here, and I have trouble arguing with those, but these are my numbers, and we have not sub-metered any of these units, but by inference you say, what is the main difference between these units? And it's the source on their heating, and one is a heat pump and one is natural gas. And interesting thing is that when you look at the natural gas versus the heat pump, there is no overlap in the costs. The worst air source heat pump is better than the best natural gas. So there's something going on there with efficiency. And what you can say is that air source does pretty good. And in comparison to how I feel about geothermal, there's one saying is that the good is enemy to the best. And that's if air source is good, geothermal is the best, but I think it's probably wise to try to do the good. For example, in this room here, we are now on air source heat pump for the last 2 months. We just put these in. We did that instead of going with the geothermal, which we have for the rest of the building. And it seemed like the right choice, and I could go into more detail on that. But anyway, to sum up, why do air source heat pumps do so well? And the way I look at it is, there is such a thing as a free lunch. There is. They say there isn't, but don't believe it. You got to believe that there is a free lunch, or you'll never get it. So, you know, with air source heat pumps, it's hard to believe that they get heat out of the air in the winter. You know, I don't really understand it. I'd rather get the heat out of the air in the summer and put it into the ground, like geothermal, like the good Lord intends. But the fact of the matter is there is energy in cold air because it is a long way down to absolute zero, which is 459.67 degrees Fahrenheit. And with the right heat pumps, you could extract heat right on down there. You could heat on the moon with heat pumps, which is only it goes down to about 212 degrees minus Fahrenheit on the dark side. So, you know, stuff works. That's all I can say.
Thank you, Kurt.
Yeah.
We do have some time left to ask questions for the panel, if anybody has additional questions here. Yes, over here.
My question is for the city and for LES. Based on how the incentives are being adopted in certain census tracts and others, and given that most of this money is set for people of lower middle income, what kind of outreach is happening on both of those levels to inform people beyond activities like this that these incentives are available, and also that people with less income stand to gain the most by reducing their energy costs?
Can you repeat? You can come up here.
Yeah, great question. Thank you. His question is about the incentives for low-income folks and what outreach is being done to connect with them. Two main vehicles. Well, maybe three. So we were promoting it through our city news channels. We had a press conference. It was on the local news. It was in the newspaper. That kind of thing. It's being promoted on social media. Mark always says that the best promoters of these programs are actually the trade allies or the HVAC contractors, because again, when you have a problem in your home, those are the first people you call. And we've had several trainings with them. We had several events with them. So they are very well aware of this program. And so I think a lot of the program awareness is going to come from them when they're on site and they're going to tell these folks, here are these programs available from the city. But in addition, our urban development department already works with contractors and with low-income folks we have other housing rehabilitation programs that are already in place. And so there again, there's an existing relationship with HVAC contractors, with landlords and so on. And so they'll find out about the program that way. Do you want to add to that?
Yeah. All of which is absolutely true. And the LES is working with the South of Downtown Rental Rehabilitation Program, which is a pilot that LES is working with the City and NeighborWorks Lincoln. And I'm excited by the fact that we have two 50-plus unit complexes in that area that are going to replace their old, inefficient, because of this program in which the landlord, the property owner, gets a grant from the city through tax increment financing, and LES provides incentives. They're going to replace old, inefficient air conditioners with ductless heat pumps for every one of those units. That never would have been possible if we didn't have this collaborative effort, because a property owner doesn't pay the utility bill, the tenant does. So the only way this happens is when we can come together, and the property owner will have some skin in the game, but they would not have done it without the assistance brought forward by the other partners. And those are some of the most exciting projects, is knowing that these tenants who are living paycheck to paycheck are going to have the comfort and the lowering of their utility bills because of this program.
Question? Right here.
You talked about rebates and incentives for homeowners. Are there any for condo owners?
Yes, I think we determined, Mark, didn't we, that condos do qualify for the program as well.
Are these units maintenance free, or is there like filters to change, that kind of thing?
I'll let Mark answer that.
You mean for the heat pumps? Oh yeah, absolutely. Got to change I mean, there's maintenance just like any other system. No different, but you have to change filters on a monthly basis, or if you get a little longer filter, a quarterly basis, whatever. Yeah, all of the maintenance, all of that's still true. And you can certainly gain efficiencies by doing that. So that doesn't take the maintenance off the list.
Yep.
And I know we're going to stick around
Yes.
to answer other
So
questions.
it is just 11:30 now. We appreciate you coming, and I want to thank the speakers. I do want to mention something. We do have a post-event survey. We really would appreciate you taking the time to fill that out and giving us some feedback. Also, on your way out, there's a couple flyers from Conservation Nebraska on upcoming events that they are sponsoring. Please feel free to take that. And if you are interested, we'd be glad to show you the commercial heat pump that we have here just outside this door. If you'd like to look at that, it's a 5-ton unit. And then Kurt can also show you our mechanical room that has an electric backup and an electric hot water heater, but it's small, so only 2 to 3 people can get in there at one time. So I want to thank the presenters for their time. Very informative. Thank you. Yeah.
Don, would you like to meet Rick Short?